Hello everyone, my name is Michael SK and welcome back to Umineko When They Cry. And wowzers, the previous video got heated for seemingly no good reason, as everybody is kind of just trapped here watching over one another and making sure that nobody is up to any more tomfoolery and that nobody else dies. Yeah, so they're pointing fingers at each other, accusing one another of who could have been doing what, who could have killed Kinzo if he has indeed been killed or has made him disappear. And I really do appreciate Battler, kind of stepping up to the plate, if you will. I don't want to use that as the terminology. I feel like I've used that a whole lot recently. But no, he definitely stood up, and he's trying to be the better voice of reason because Eva and Hideyoshi have kind of, tag teamed up here to, take Natsuhi down, which is kind of messed up. I don't really agree with it personally, but it's kind of what we're seeing. And she definitely is kind of set up in a bad position because she was the last person to go and talk with Kinzo as far as we all can tell. And now Kinzo isn't here, but Battler actually came up with some pretty interesting ideas, such as, well, he could have hid in his room when Natsuhi and Genji, I'm pretty sure, one of the servants, went to go check up on him and realized that he wasn't there, which means he never left the room, but he created the impression that he did. So that, in my opinion, as silly as it may sound, is a logical explanation, and it doesn't jump to the conclusion that somebody took him out. Anyways, back to the arguing. Jessica suddenly started coughing. Oh yeah, Jessica's having like a panic attack right now because, she's trying to, stand up for her mother. If it's your parent that people are talking crap about, without real evidence, I'm sure you'd be, having a hard time. At first I thought she was just choking after yelling too loud, but before long I realized how painful it looked. Jessica kept coughing and choking down on her hands and knees. Yeah, what is happening with her? Is it a panic attack? Oh, okay. I see. Dr. Nanjo pulled I actually don't know how to pronounce that. But yeah, it's an inhaler, and it looks like she does have some sort of, probably not bronchitis specifically, but she definitely seems to have some sort of breathing impairment. From his bag, which was lying on the sofa, and handed it to Jessica. Come to think of it, 6 years ago, didn't Jessica sometimes break into violent coughing fits and have to use that? However, 6 years ago, I never saw Jessica look like she was in this much pain. There's a lot going on here. Yeah, asthma, there we go. I was trying to think of the word that, a lot of people have asthma. I couldn't think of the actual, name of it. I don't know if that's something you're born with, but I don't know. I just could not think of it for some silly reason. Jesus. Taking the inhaler from Kanun-kun, Jessica used it with a practiced hand. It looked like her throat would still itch for a while, but she had it under control. Now, I don't have asthma, but I definitely, knew people that had some breathing issues growing up and they had to use an inhaler or something along those lines. And obviously, as a kid, I'm not going to fully understand, but growing up, yeah, that fucking sucks. That actually just sucks. Beads of sweat covered Jessica's whole body, and she couldn't hide her rough breathing, but it looked like her sudden attack had calmed down for now. Oh, by the way, I definitely forgot to get this out of the way in the intro. So it is New Year's Eve, and I love recording on New Year's Eve because this is the one night that I expect and am willing to record along with noise because, yes, fireworks. This is America, after all. We have to fire off the fireworks or else you're not actually an American. It's kind of the same thing on 4th of July, but I don't know if I record those nights anymore. I might. We'll say it's the same type of day. I got 3 hours until midnight. I'm definitely recording this a lot earlier than I wanted to, but there's the possibility that some fireworks may get through here and there. One of my dogs is with me for some reason, so hopefully she stays, nice and away from me and in her little corner of the room, and, there's no issues. But I'm just letting you guys know. This disturbance has made the dangerous atmosphere up until now seem slightly unfocused, but that's fine. That kind of battle of mutual suspicion is completely unnecessary. I agree. I mean, everybody's on edge. You don't want that. That's just going to break everybody down even more. When you think about it, finding alibis for each other and looking for the culprit is probably meaningless. After all, we're just powerless ordinary people. And when the police come tomorrow, they'll definitely employ cutting-edge techniques and investigate the case thoroughly, solving all the riddles and arresting the culprit.
確かにバトラ君の言う通りかしら。夏日姉さんが疑わしいように、私たちも疑わしさを拭えていない。
Yeah, I will admit it is very suspicious of Eva's position right now because she's basically the one that's going to be getting everything now. She's the only remaining sibling, and Hideyoshi really teamed up with her here to kind of go after Natsuhi. Like, Hideyoshi was trying to make it sound like, hey, we're not trying to attack you, but we're kind of having to do so. It's like an obligation. And it's like, no, that means you're teaming up. Like, you're definitely, trying to shoot her down as the culprit here. So I don't think that's right, which is so disappointing because I was kind of rooting for Hideyoshi, but I guess they have their own reasons. As we saw from the original conversation amongst all the siblings, everybody has something that they want all that money for. They all have something going on, and they will try to reach their goals in some sort of way.
明日、警察に全てを任せれば済むだけの話よ。でも、バトラ君だって知りたいんじゃないの？
Yeah, and eventually we will.
犯人を、大切な人を失った痛みを思い知らせてやるために、1秒でも早く知りたいんじゃない？
それは否定しないです。これだけの上等を決めてくれやがった野郎を。でも、だからといって、18人の中の誰かを疑いたくはない。さっきはああ言ったが、俺は、エヴァおばさんだって疑いたくない。
Yeah, I mean, that would mean that we have had somebody betray us, betray the entire family, betray the trust that we have built amongst each other. And that's just going to bring more pain down. Especially now, like, after the murders have happened, like, freshly.
そんなおばさんと、こんな罵り合いはしたくねえ。ここにいる誰だって、そんなことは望んでねえはずさ。だろ、みんな。
バトラ君に同じ意味のない罵り合いだね。多分これだけの人数が朝から一ところにずっと集まってるから。I believe so.
Yeah.
みんな
でしょうな。無理もないことです。言ってできるものではありませんが、なるべく皆さんリラックスしましょう。
Which is very difficult to do so. Very difficult to do that. Again, fresh in our minds, the murders did happen.
わしらも頭を冷やすべきとちゃうか。レシートの件は確かにお父さんの失踪を探る上で重要な手がかりになると思うで。警察が来たら話すといいやろ。
そうね、そう。レシートの一件でつい鬼の首を取ったような気持ちになっちゃったのね。確かに夏日姉さんだけを疑うのはフェアじゃないわ。私たちだって等しく疑わしい。
Wow. All right. There's a sense of reason here. Holy crap.
でもね、バトラ君、レシートの話だけは本当よ。これ忘れないでね。
No, I'll keep that in my mind. So when that was brought up, I thought that was very confusing. I was like, what are you talking about? It seems to be like a little bit of a Death Note sort of move, trying to make sure that something only happened once that receipt was moved. Basically a bit of an alarm, if you will. A tripwire.
どういう意味を持つか、もう一度よく考えてみてね。
Okay, well that's not suspicious. What the fuck? Wait, what the hell? Aunt Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi stood up. It looked like they planned on leaving the parlor. That was weird. Okay, wait, this is something that I think she's going to say. Or nope, that's something Ava's going to say. So I've seen some people say in the comments that, like, this is a little weird how, like, the lines are kind of getting, like, shifted around awkwardly. If anybody has a solution for that, I'm definitely all ears, but I do not want to have to go through and change the translation again or whatever I'm using. I think I'm using the witch hunt variation instead of whatever the default was. I'd like to keep using that, but if you have a solution onto, you know, how to fix everything else, by all means. That's right. Even if we don't play this detective game, the typhoon will pass, and when those lively seagulls return to the harbor, everything will settle itself. When those seagulls cry, am I right? That's right. If you think about it, this kind of crime is completely trivial. It will definitely be resolved, even if we do nothing. When the seagulls cry. Hey, I beat you to it. Fuck you, game. No, I will say it. I definitely don't want to see your face anymore.
ゲストハウスに帰らなくて済むようにって客室を用意してくれたのよね。あそこはバスもトイレもあるし、鍵もチェーンもかかる。横になれるベッドもあるし、主人もマリアちゃんとチャンネル争いをせずにテレビを見ることができるわ。お好きになさるといいでしょ。でも、くれぐれも用心を。
I mean, if they die, then that clears them, I guess.
ありがとう、姉さん。
Or does it?
そして余計なお世話よ。姉さんはみんなの監視をよろしくね。犯人はこの中に必ずいるんだから。そして姉さんも自分が監視をされていることをお忘れなく。捨て台詞はそれで十分ですか？ええ、十分よ。じゃあね、夏日姉さん。
バイバイ。
源氏さん、夕食になったら呼んでね。それまでチェーンをかけて閉じこもってるわ。源氏、かの、お二人を客室までお送りを。結構よ。送り狼なんて嫌だもん。
Oh my god, come on.
むしろ、私たちが部屋に行くまで誰もこの部屋を出ないでくれる方が安心よ。
How are we gonna, like, verify that they made it to the guest house?
ジョージ行くわよ。
Yeah, we're no longer, like...
僕は、ここでみんなといるよ。
Yeah, we're no longer keeping an eye on everybody here, so... Yeah, that's gonna get a little weird. How can we verify where they're going to be and what they're going to be doing?
ジョージ、この部屋に犯人がいるのよ。そんなところにいるつもり？
この部屋を出るということは、親族の誰かを疑うのと同じことだよ。
And George doesn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to do
恐ろしい
that.
ことができる人間が親族にいるなんて信じない。
I do think the best thing to do is to just, you know, ride it out, but to also work together.
ジョージ、あなたからも言ってやってよ。
ジョージももう一人前の男や。そのジョージの仁義がこの部屋から出えへん言わせるなら、それも勝手やろ。好きにさせたれ。
父さん。
Aunt Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi left. The only voice that called after them was the sound of the rain. I think that was a good move on George. Definitely, he's speaking up for himself, doing what he feels is right. The parlor was being buried beneath the savage atmosphere. When I looked at the clock, I was surprised to find that it was already evening. Oh, nighttime approaches again. Had we really spent that much time worrying about needless things, talking with each other, fighting with each other? Yeah. Feeling bored, I started scratching at my head when... Ah, fuck. Yeah, if we're not gonna fight amongst each other, we'll fight with Maria. Maria and I made eye contact. And I was a little surprised, since I thought that she was completely immersed in the TV.
今なら信じるぜ。手紙も殺人もすべてベアトリーチェの仕業だ。いや、むしろ頼むからそうだと名乗り出てほしいぜ。19人目の仕業ってことにさせてくれ。じゃなきゃ俺たち18人はいつまでも互いを疑い合わなくちゃならねえ。 これなら19人目の存在を信じる方がマシさ。
Okay, so he's not necessarily believing in Beatrice the witch, but he is believing in Beatrice being that of a 19th person, somebody outside of the family that committed the crimes.
扉も窓も開けずにじい様を外へ連れ出すなんて、ベアトリーチェならお茶の子さいさいなんだろう。
I don't think Maria's liking any of this. Maria, after taking a single short breath, hung her head and then raised her face again.
そうだよ。
Well, she's back in the other Maria form, that of which I am not a fan of, but I guess you could also argue I'm not a fan of the other Maria either.
魔女の前に扉の鍵なんて何の役にも立たないんだよ。ベアトリーチェは72柱の全てに精通する。
What the fuck?
33位のガープは望む相手を望む場所へ瞬時に運ぶ力を与えるし。
Huh. Okay, that's neat, I think.
彼女にとってどのような密室に閉じこもった人間だろうと連れ出すことは難しいことでも何でもないんだよ。
魔女はすげえな。頼むから。もしまだ事件を起こす気なら絶対に人間には無理なことをして俺に19人目を、いや魔女の存在を信じさせてくれよ。
I mean, if she is a witch, and if she's real, and if she's here, then yeah, I mean, she might be hearing you right now. But also, the murders that we, have seen the results of, maybe we can also argue that that could not have been the work of a human. But we don't know.
いいよ。あったら伝えておくよ。
Lovely. Great conversation. Crap. Nothing's made sense to me for a while now. Just when I want to believe in a 19th person, I deny it. And just when I want to believe there are only 18 people, I deny that too. Even though I want there to be more than just the 18 people here, I can't accept the existence of that 19th person. In short, even though there are more than 18 people, there are less than 19 people. The number of people in this mansion is 19 greater than X greater than 18. So the number of people can't be represented by an integer. However, it's impossible for there to be anything after that decimal point. You shouldn't be able to show the number of people with anything but an integer. And yet, 19 greater than X greater than 18. How do you explain the fraction less than 1? It's no wonder that 19th person was something that could not be seen. That's why, since you can only write the number of people as an integer, you couldn't see that person. That witch cannot be seen, because Beatrice has no body. Therefore, she is invisible. A little bit more than invisible. I think that was brought up in the last episode or the one before. But no, she's not just invisible. She just does not properly exist on this plane. But she's also, some of her does, just physically no. Is there a 19th person or not? Does the witch exist or not? And there's our formula. Not too crazy of one, honestly. The witch exists somewhere in that X. I mean, we have 8 episodes of Umineko When They Cry, which is all about this Beatrice that is a witch, supposedly. That gives me the impression that witches are definitely a thing here, but are they witches in that they have all these lovely powers and whatnot, or are they witches in name only? What makes a witch? What do we have to expect? And more so, what happened here? I definitely would like to look at the bigger picture, but at the same time, we also have to look, close to home and try to figure out what specifically happened here first. The uncomfortable atmosphere continued even after those two left. It was thick with the idea that simply thinking about the culprit's identity would be the same as deciding whom to suspect. It had begun to feel like discussion of the case was itself taboo, so no one mentioned the case, at least out loud. However, those thoughts were what filled our minds. All that we couldn't say aloud made our heads feel like they were going to explode. So at least on the outside, the parlor had once again regained its calm mood. Everything was left unsettled.
少しだけ雨足が弱まった気がするね。
おお、まだいっぱい降ってるよ。おお。
仮にやんだって、この島には船がねえんだしな。船が明日すぐに来てくれりゃいいんだがよ。洋館バカンさんもうお腹いっぱいだぜ。
It'd be even nicer if we were able to communicate with someone via radio.
母さん。
But alas, we don't even get that opportunity.
船はいつ来るのかな。
本来なら帰りの船は今日の3時に来てくれることになっていました。先方も台風が過ぎてから出直すと電話をしてくれたでしょうが、あいにく電話は普通ですから。でも向こうも子供の使いではありません。客人の方々の送迎目的だと教えてありますから、おそらく明日の朝一番で、多分9時頃に来てくれるでしょう。
Okay, so we have to make it to at least 9 o'clock. We have to survive this next night, and we have to make sure we get around any other potential murders. And I'm telling you guys, nighttime is when shit really gets crazy. That's why I was a little surprised that we actually slept through the night. But that night is when things actually went down. In what regard, we don't know. It was completely black outside. When I looked at the clock, I realized that it was just past 7 o'clock. I was starting to get hungry. Wait, they didn't have dinner yet? I think they're getting ready to. In the kitchen, Kumasawa was cooking enthusiastically, She had laid out a variety of dishes, and while they didn't match the level of Goda's artful cooking, they were still quite gorgeous. It was an act of kindness from Kumasawa, who was trying to enliven everyone's low spirits with some food. Kumasawa wasn't nearly as talented as a professional cook like Goda, but she was far from unskilled. On the contrary, since she had been brought up in a fishing village, the simple food that she had created was sometimes highly praised. Kanun arranged the food that Kumasawa had finished creating on plates under her direction. Kanun also helped in the kitchen sometimes, but since he was rarely placed in that role, he was slightly awkward, even though he tried his best. Self-conscious about the fact that he couldn't cleverly arrange the food, Kanun's expression darkened slightly. But Kumasawa smiled as though everything was fine.
綺麗に盛り付けられてますよ。カノン君もお上手ですよ。
シャノン姉さんだったらもっと綺麗に。
Kanun stopped arranging the food for a bit and hung his head. Shanun was the one who always assisted Kumasawa in her cooking. Tonight, Kanun was doing it instead. And as he remembered Shanun's face and her brutal end, he grimaced. Yeah, no point in bringing that up. Honestly, I was going to bring it up earlier, but if any of the family members try to grieve over the ones they've lost, it brings up the emotions and it might bring up thoughts that, yeah, they're in the room with, the killer, potentially. So this is such a psychological battle, a mental fight that they're all having to go through here because they all have somebody to mourn. Well, everybody with an asterisk. Yeah, not really sure if it really is everybody, but we'll go along with it, if you will. Genji spoke kindly to Kanun as he advanced upon. Nanjo had escaped from the parlor once the mood had grown sour, and Genji had become his opponent in a game of chess upon Nanjo's request.
はい、今は忘れます。
それがいいだろう。
I really respect Genji, by the way. I don't know if I've brought that up, but I definitely respect him. He is just a good guy, I think, through and through. Going for the job, doing his best there, but also he knows his role very, very well. He's very smart. Genji purposefully refrained from facing Kanun as he spoke. He did so because he understood that it might make things tougher on Kanun if he noticed that someone was looking at his eyes. Nanjo also understood that and held back any thoughtless words.
金蔵さんもどこへ行かれたんでしょうな。ご無事だといいのですが。
Again, I'm still trying to, think about things in the realm of logic, but I know that's going to get a little bit difficult coming up soon.
わかりません。ただ、すべては親方様が望まれ、仕組まれたことのように思っています。
Ayo?
それを邪推することは 親方様にお仕えする家具には過ぎたことです。
What does Genji know?
源氏さんは怖くないのですか？私には今夜まだ何か良くないことが起こるような気がして怖いのです。怖いことなど何も。私はただ後宮家にお仕えするだけですので。
Nanjo sighed through his nose and made a carefully considered move. Nanjo was very slightly dubious. Could Genji possibly be thinking that he'd be left out of this? Oh, I think Genji is like a target as much as anybody else. He couldn't even imagine what was happening inside this mansion, but he definitely couldn't deny the possibility that Kinzo had devised something. If you liken this island to chess, Kinzo had opened the game, and as a result, 6 pieces had been defeated. Could it be that Genji was calm because he believed he alone was on the outside of the chessboard and therefore safe? Nah, I don't think so. I think he's kind of resigned himself to whatever fate comes up because he trusts in Kinzo. He's put his life in his hands. For better or for worse, probably the latter, but Nanjo thought about it. Isn't everyone just a piece on this chessboard lined up equally without any exceptions? Wasn't even Genji, who had gained more of Kinzo's trust than anyone, no, who was confident of his position as Kinzo's only close friend, just another one of the pieces laid out on the chessboard? Yeah, nobody's sleeping soundly tonight. I'd like to say that Nanjo here would be the safest because he is most definitely not a part of the family. He is a doctor for Kinzo, and I guess also a friend over time, but I don't know. I guess you can still argue that his gold brought Nanjo here, so shit, yeah, maybe not. It's an interesting painting, by the way, on the wall back there. I don't know why that's drawn my attention. But the guest room Eva and Hideyoshi moved into had originally been built to house guests before the guest house's construction. So until a few years ago, they had stayed in these rooms every family conference and were very familiar with them. This room was just like a room at a hotel with a bedroom and a bathroom. So even though they were still shut in, it was far more comfortable than the parlor. Honestly, I could definitely shoot for this, you know, either by myself or with somebody that I was extremely comfortable with, you know, just being in a nice room with everything that you would need, just chilling for an entire day. Definitely a lot more comfortable than being, you know, trapped seemingly in a room like they were because they're suspecting one another and they need to keep an eye on one another. The tensions would be high.
夏日姉さんが客間を出るなって威張り散らしてるんだもん。誰も口答えなんてできないでしょ。あの人ずーっと冷や飯を食ってきたから兄さんが死んでやっと天下が来たって張り切ってんのよ。まったくずうずうしいったらあるしな。
Yeah, it sucks that nobody will ever truly believe what Kinzo actually told her.
まあそう言うな。夏日さんもあれで結構頑張っとるんやで。お前もそう突っかからんでもええやないか。さっきのレシートの件もあそこまでは言い過ぎやで。
Hey yo?
だってあそこで言わなかったらもう言うタイミングがないんだもん。
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Eva, sulking cutely and looking at the television, sat along Hideyoshi, who was lying on the bed. What did she mean by that?
でも、こうして二人きりになるのはずいぶん久しぶりよね。
Also, this is one of the biggest red flags that I've seen yet.
そうやな。思えば、わしもお前も老けたもんや。ジョージが生まれてから何もかもがあっという間や。
本当にあっという間よ。子供を作るの焦りすぎたかしら。
Ava's eyes looked like they were staring off into the distance. Yeah, she had thought of it as a once-in-a-lifetime chance. I'm still thinking about that fucking receipt. Fuck whatever this conversation is. Like, I'm thinking about that receipt. Her older brother Kraus had been unable to father a child for quite some time. 6 years passed after his marriage to Natsuhi without any signs of pregnancy, which didn't please Kinzo at all. Eva herself had thought that, since her name would be moved outside the Ushiromiya register when she got married anyway, it didn't matter whether a successor to the headship was born or not. And then one day, she had a heavenly revelation, or maybe it was the whisperings of the devil that she had listened to in her greed. If she could give birth to a successor first, wouldn't she be able to remain in the Ushiromiya register? If things went well, might she have a chance to inherit the Ushiromiya family herself? When she proposed this to Hideyoshi, he had approved of it instantly. This wasn't because Hideyoshi also had greedy thoughts. For Hideyoshi, who had no close relatives, it was his chance, or it was a chance for him to feel once more the long-forgotten thing called family. So when they got married, he hadn't fussed over which last name they were going to keep, and had quickly agreed to have his name entered into the Ushiromiya family register. It hadn't been easy to persuade Kinzo, but as his daughter, Eva knew Kinzo's personality well, so by choosing the time when Kinzo was most dissatisfied with Natsuhi, she was magnificently able to make him accept Hideyoshi as an adopted son-in-law. Looking at Hideyoshi, who had achieved success after starting from nothing, Kinzo might have seen a little bit of himself. He quickly grew to like Hideyoshi and approved his transfer into the Ushiromiya register. George would eventually become the successor of the Ushiromiya family. They had raised him strictly with that purpose in mind. He had been worth their while and had grown into a fabulous young man who wouldn't disappoint no matter where he went. That was why he had not been permitted to fall in love with a servant like Shannon. Yeah, it did seem like they were pulling the secrecy, sort of trick that, they really had to meet in private during these get-togethers and all that on both of their ends here. Well, she's a servant, so, it would be a little not right to be seen romantically with a guest or somebody that she's working for. And for him, yeah, he's definitely being groomed to be in that high up position, to be leading this family at one point. So, for him to be with a servant who's working for him, it gets a little complicated. And especially back then, things were a little different. And with money, things are a little convoluted. Beyond me a little bit. But so when she had learned that Shannon was dead and the engagement was now invalid, though part of her had still been shocked by the gruesome crime, part of her had also been relieved that her dear George would not be stolen by some servant girl. That is so fucked up, honestly. Like, we got to learn a little bit more about, like, what is it? How she came up. Same thing with Kanun. Because they didn't have any families and they were actually raised and grew up a certain way. So they definitely had some standards. They really did. And they got to work here. They're not just servants. Definitely not. Or furniture, in my opinion. They definitely have some skills. They definitely have some stuff going on for them. More so than just other servants or other people that just got into the servant role. In my opinion.
昔から嫌いだったわ。偉そうで威張ってて。自分がやがては当主になるのだと自慢してて。
Also, orphan was what I was looking for. I don't know why I can't think of the most simple of words and names and everything.
それに一矢報いてやりたかった。でも、それは子供の頃の感情なのよ。でもその感情は結局自分の人生のほとんどを支配した。それだけならまだいい。その感情はあなたやジョージまで巻き込んで振り回してしまった。
エヴァ、備え自分を責めるな。
Hideyoshi got up and held Eva's shoulder. She could feel a warm understanding from him.
わしはな、わしの唯一の家だと思っとる。
This is why I like Hideyoshi.
わしとお前が 歩んできた人生にな。今日までほんまに楽しい。
He's really good with his words and explaining his perspective on everything. In my opinion, that
あり
is.
がとうあなた
Eva hung her head, burying her face in Hideyoshi's chest. Probably no one in the parlor could even imagine that this side of Eva existed.
感謝するのはわしや。今日までお前と一緒にいて後悔した日なんてあらへん。
Hell yeah, Hideyoshi.
私もよあなた
Those
と
are
一
some
緒に
strong words, but they're good and effective. Or at least I would hope.
ジョージももう立派な大人や。レコー店に聞いてみんとわからんが、多分大晦日前には。
Uh-oh. Why is he cutting himself off there?
いや
Oh, okay.
今すぐがいい
I get scared whenever people like have the that little hyphen or whatever there to cut off a sentence or whatever. I definitely get worried, but Eva nagged at his lips in a peevish yet flirtatious manner. The only sounds that filled the room were the distant voice of the announcer on the news, which Hideyoshi had left on, and the obnoxious pounding of the rain against the window. Again, this is still all very much a red flag. If they are not the killers, of which I definitely don't want to accuse them of being them, despite being as suspicious as they are, like, I don't know, man, just... Fuck, I don't know. I just don't know. There was a knock on the door and Genji-san entered.
奥様、お夕食の準備が整いました。お食事はまたこちらでよろしいですか？
ええここへ運ばせなさい南條先生はまだ厨房にいるのですか
はい。次の一手を熟考したいとおっしゃっております。ご安心を。他の使用人たちとご一緒です。
Yeah, I'm not worried about Nanjo. I think he's
さん
fine.
はじい様の相手ができるくらいチェスが強いもんな。南條先生よりも強いらしいぜ。
そうなんだ。昔相手をしてもらったことがあるけど、あれは勝たせてくれたのかな。
マリア、もうすぐ飯だそうだぜ。
Also, just a heads up, I hope there's not going to be like a whole lot of chess references, like the structure and rules of chess being brought up throughout all this, because I do not have a single idea as to how that game works whatsoever.
しかし、よく一日中テレビを見ていて
Now, checkers, on the other hand,
いつもテレビいっぱい見てるから平気。
that's not healthy.
マリアちゃんはテレビっ子なんだね。
This new generation of
食
kids,
事だから
come on now.
机の上を片付けないとダメだぜ。
Earlier, we had torn several pages out of Maria's notebook, and there was now a mess where everyone had been drawing together. Jessica began cleaning that up quickly. Still, everyone here really can draw. I would never have guessed.
源氏エヴァさんたちにもせめて食事くらい一緒にしないかとお声をかけなさいどうせ断るでしょうが
かしこまりました。
お父様の次はエヴァさんですかつくづく後宮家の食卓には全員が揃いませんね
Now, all I'm gonna say is that whenever he heads over there, and if they're gone, if they've disappeared, or they're dead, or whatever, well, obviously that clears their names, but that also most definitely verifies that there is a 19th person here. Natsuhi felt her headache start throbbing again and lightly held her temples. Actually, no, not really. Kinzo is still out and about. We have not confirmed whether he's alive or dead or wherever he is located. So, I don't know. Can't really say. Did I read this? Natsuhi felt... Yeah, okay, I did. I think. I'm going to say I did. I will go with that. The distance from the kitchen to the parlor wasn't that great, so Genji had gone and come back by himself, but the guest room was a little further away. Natsuhi had warned him to avoid being alone whenever possible, and just now, Nanjo, who had admonished him, saying it would be better if he held a little more concern for his safety. Kanun accompanied Genji, and the two of them went to visit Eva and Hideyoshi in their guest room. Oh, here we go, gamers. Genji knocked on the door.
エヴァ様、秀吉様、お夕食の準備が整いました。
He waited a short while for them to come out, but there was no response.
源氏様これは
What are they looking at? Kanun pointed under the door. Oh, no. No way. What the fuck? A Western-style envelope had been inserted under I? Wait, under I? What the fuck? I don't think that was correct, but normally when something was inserted this way, it would be interpreted as a message from someone outside to someone in the room. So since this might be a private note meant for Eva and Hideyoshi, it was not something that Kanon and Genji were supposed to take interest in. But this Western envelope was one of Kinzo's, the same kind as the one that Maria had taken out last night and surprised everyone with. Yeah, lovely. Great.
親方様の封筒だ。
あるいは
Even though this was one of Kinzo's employees, the letter Maria had read aloud the previous night had not come from Kinzo. Genji continued knocking a little harder and called out in a loud voice.
エヴァ様、源氏でございます。いらっしゃいますか。
Damn, this is the loudest I've heard Genji.
お返事をお願いいたします。エヴァ様。
But there was no response from inside. Sometimes when the servants went to call some guests for a meal, the guests would be sleeping so deeply that they wouldn't wake up. In times like that, the servants would stick a letter in the door to show that it was time to come out and leave the guests be. But despite that, Genji beat even harder on the door and called out Eva's name. However, there was no answer. Kanon stuck his ear up to the door, held his breath, and listened for any sounds coming from inside. A little hard to do with all the, Yeah, okay, so they left the TV on. I was gonna say, that's gonna be a little hard with all the fucking rain and wind.
でも気配が感じられません。お部屋は空っぽかも。
Genji took out a handkerchief, and careful not to touch it with his bare hands, gently pulled out the envelope that had been stuck under the door. It was sealed with deep red sealing wax. Without a doubt, the mark on that sealing wax had come from the Ushiromiya family head's ring.
エヴァ様、エヴァ様、どうかお返事を。もうお部屋にはいらっしゃいませんか。
But there was still no answer. There was a chance that those two were aimlessly walking around the mansion. This was the home that Eva had grown up in. There was plenty of reason to think that she had gone out on a casual stroll. Genji groped around in his pocket and pulled out the bundle of keys, which contained the key that would open the guest room.
ケンジ様。
Now, this is a special circumstance, honestly. Like, yeah, if this was just a normal trip, like it had meant to be, then yeah, obviously you would not do this if you didn't get a response from one of the guest rooms. But here, where 6 people have died and another has gone missing, you cannot be that fucking, you can't be that sort of way. You definitely cannot. Servant or another guest or even somebody that lives here, definitely not. Kanon also understood what this meant. They would sometimes unlock the doors so they could go in and do things like make the beds, but only after they made sure that the guests were out. To unlock the door for any other reason, and especially to do so when there was a chance the guests had not given permission and might still be in there, was an action unbecoming of a servant. But Genji had decided, if the only problem had been that his knock hadn't received a reply, he would not have gone this far. But the envelope under the door was doubtlessly one of Kinzo's, or rather one of the Western envelopes of the Ushiromiya family head. After last night, the sender of this envelope could be someone other than Kinzo, excuse me. If this letter had been sent by someone else, yeah, we know who that someone else may be.
申し訳ございません。お部屋を失礼させていただきます。
After giving that final notice, Genji stuck one of the keys from the bundle into the keyhole. Oh, what are we going to see? Will it be an empty room? Will there be corpses? Maybe they're just asleep, like very soundly for whatever reason? I don't know. Place your bets. There was the sound of the door unlocking, and after slowly turning the knob, he slowly started opening the door. Oh, what are we gonna see? Lovely door opening sound effect that I hear whenever I load this fucking game up. Light seeped through the crack of the door. Were they in the room? Or had they forgotten to turn out the lights? What? What the fuck? It was the sound of the door chain being pulled tight. Oh, okay, that's right. The chain had been secured. The chain couldn't be secured from the outside. So it also proved that they were in the room. The sound of voices on the TV seeped out of the room. The lights, the chain, and the TV. All of these things made it clear they were in the room. Or were they? But there was no sign of them. They could be doing the same fucking thing that Kinzo did. Or that shows that there is something else going on here that is basically giving off the impression that they left the room without leaving the room through, like, the obvious ways. Genji called to Eva once again through the crack on the door, but there was no answer.
Genji-sama, いかがしますか?
As a part of their job, the servants were able to unlock almost any lock in the mansion, but they had no way to open a door with a chain. The only way to get by the chain was to cut it. That was certainly not permitted as part of a servant's usual work. A creepy chill had already rushed up their backs. Kanun held his breath again and tried to sense someone through the door, but even so, he was not able to sense anyone.
私は奥様をお呼びしてくる。カノンはチェーンの切断を。
はい。
As Kanun hurried away to get a cutting tool, Genji called him to a stop.
待てカノン。厨房に戻り、熊沢と行動するように断じて一人で行動してはならんぞ。
Yeah, we need to do the buddy system here, honestly.
はい、かしこまりました。
It looked like Kanun was wondering why he had to do something so troublesome in the middle of this urgent situation. But Genji had said it out of wariness. He didn't care what happened to himself, but in the worst case scenario, he didn't want anything to happen to Kanun. Again, good guy Genji, truly. In the kitchen, Kumasawa was piling food on the serving cart, and Nanjo was waiting for Genji, apparently wanting to show him a move that he had finally thought up that might turn the tables on him. But Genji's appearance immediately told him that something was wrong.
おや、どうしましたか、源氏さん。南條先生、申し訳ありませんが、この勝負は一度中断させてください。カノンはチェーンを頼む。熊沢、食事の配膳は一時中断し、カノンと同行するように、私は奥様のところへ行く。南條先生もご一緒に。何かあったんですかな。
Genji took Nanjo, who still didn't know what was going on, and quickly left the kitchen.
熊沢さん、申し訳ありませんが、僕と一緒に来てください。
何があったんですか、カノンさん。
Even I'm not entirely sure. Kumasawa said almost exactly the same thing as Nanjo, unable to take in the situation, and chased after Kanun, who had flown out into the hallway. Taking Kumasawa with him, Kanun went to a storage room and looked through the tools packed in toolboxes and hanging all over the walls, trying to find something that could be used to cut the chain.
何を探してるんですか。私も手伝いますよ。
ドアチェーンを切断するんです。大きめの番線カッターはどこだっけ。
ドアチェーンをどうしてそんなことをするんですか。
Yeah, that is so unlike anything they would ever do. Like, it just doesn't seem to be something they would ever have to do as a servant, but here we are.
エヴァ様たちのお部屋にチェーンが中にいらっしゃるはずなのに、お声をかけても返事がないんです。
It took Kumasawa some time to figure out how cutting the chain and Eva and Hideyoshi not answering were connected, but she did realize that this was an urgent situation.
これなら多分。
Kanun took down a very large wire cutter that had been hanging on the wall. It was called a cutter, but maybe it would be easier to understand if we said it was shaped like a large pair of pliers. No, that might work, probably. It sort of depends on the thickness of the chain, but I would assume it would be, you know, pretty normal, I think, for a door chain. Kanun remembered once being warned that this dangerous tool could easily cut through one of your fingers. Okay, that does sound pretty sharp. Kanun took that and rushed up the stairs. He already knew instinctively he should fight for every minute, every second to open it quickly. Or perhaps it was already...
待ってください、カノンさん。
Yeah, we have to, like, remember that she's coming with us. We can't just leave her behind.
早く。
I understand that there is a sense of urgency, and I'm happy that Kanun also understands that, but goddamn. Kumasawa eventually caught up with him, gasping for breath with both hands on her knees. When Kanun changed his grip on the wire cutters and looked up at the door, he let out an ah, struck speechless. Something's different here, isn't it? Something's fucking different. What the fuck?
何ですかこれは。
What the fuck happened in like the time from us going back to the mansion to here? Kumasawa screamed weakly. Yeah, that was kind of weak. Her face pallid. That was no surprise, because right there on the door, just like the magic circle that had been drawn on the shutter of the Rose Garden storehouse, there was another eerie shape drawn with a blood-like paint. However, it would be odd to call this one a magic circle. No, it's a whole lot more, I don't know, I don't want to say detailed. The other one was detailed pretty much the same. Because unlike what most people would expect, it wasn't a circle with shapes drawn inside it, but a slightly more complicated geometrical shape. Yeah, there's some 3D to it, huh? It kind of looks like it. There's some depth. However, those strange characters filling in the gaps, which weren't from the alphabet, were the same kind as the ones on that magic circle on the shutter. Hebrew, right? But the thing that had Konon struck speechless wasn't how eerie that magic circle was. It was that something like this hadn't been here a short while ago. That is the big shock, actually. Because, what, 5-10 minutes maybe was all it took to go back and forth here? It wasn't that long of a time. It couldn't have been. Like, they were all very, very much conscious of what they were doing and probably how much time had taken them to run back and run back over here after getting something and Kumasawa. So what the fuck? Somebody did this in that short of a time. First, he had taken a trip back to the kitchen. After that, he had gone to the storage room to grab a tool and headed right back. Put those together and it couldn't have been more than 5 minutes. Yeah, exactly. How could someone add something this creepy during that period of time? And as though it had just been drawn, almost like the door itself was bleeding, several unsettling vertical red lines slowly dripped down, getting longer and longer. I hate that Kumasawa's the one that has to witness this shit this time around. Kumasawa's knees gave away and she sank down on the spot. If Kumasawa hadn't done this first, then Konon surely would have wanted to.
Beatrice様の仕業ですよ。恐ろしや恐ろしや。
Yeah, I have a very interesting idea as to what went on in there. I'm sure you guys won't guess it, but I think there's a couple of dead bodies in there. At least. Konon gulped, and then readied the wire cutter and approached the door. He didn't want to get close to this disturbing magic circle, and he really didn't want to touch the steadily dripping substance that looked like blood. But if he didn't get close, he wouldn't be able to cut the chain. It probably is blood, honestly. I don't know, I guess it would have a bit of a scent, but, I mean, if there are some dead bodies in there, then there's also a supply of blood to use as paint. Fighting this cold feeling, he gulped again, and after gathering his courage, he went even closer, put the wire cutter up against the chain, and then he pressed with all of his strength, managing to cut through the chain far more easily than he anticipated. The cut chain fell into two separate parts, which continued to clang as they swayed back and forth.
Kanon-san, 足元に封筒が。
Another one?
しかもこれは
Wait,
親方様のもの。
did we not take the first one back? It looked like Kumasawa had also noticed the western envelope at the bottom of the door, and that the sealing wax had been sealed with the head's ring. Konon hesitated for just a second over whether he should open the letter first or check inside the room. I think maybe it is still the same one, we just didn't take it back. But he eventually decided on fulfilling his original purpose. Oh, that could be the end of us there. Konon pulled a handkerchief out of his pocket. This was so he wouldn't leave fingerprints on the door. If his worst fears were realized, the police would want to investigate this room too. Oh, here we go. What are we gonna find in here? Oh boy. He slowly pushed the door open. He was able to more clearly hear the sound of the television, which had been seeping out faintly this whole time.
Eva-sama.
Eva was lying face up on the bed. On the bed with her shoes still on. Kumasawa, who had fearfully entered the... Why is she coming in with us? She's already scared, like she can barely walk. She fell to her knees. And she's coming in. God damn. That's either curiosity or bravery. Or maybe a mix of the two, but Jesus. Kumasawa, who had fearfully entered after Kanon, who was hiding behind his back, screamed a short eek, again, when she saw Eva like that. Eva's shoes had been the first part of her that Kanon had seen, so the oddness of wearing shoes in bed was the first thing to strike him. But when Eva's head shifted into his line of sight, Kanon could not help but let out a short scream like Kumasawa. Right in the middle of Eva's forehead, something had been placed. Like inserted into the forehead, you mean? Something was growing there? No. Right in... Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. Right in the center of the forehead, or of her forehead, was it an old-fashioned knife? That or some weapon like it was sticking out. Okay. So she just... Okay. Wait, where's Hideyoshi, though? Like, this is Eva, but where's Hideyoshi? At the base of where it was stuck in, blood dripped down, staining the sheets on the other side bright red. Kumasawa's knees gave way once more, and she sank down on the floor. Yeah, she didn't get to see the other body, so this is her first time here. Her mouth kept flapping open and closed, but she couldn't even scream. Eva was dead, with some kind of weapon sticking out of her forehead, and I heard our little chime, by the way. That's not where I wanted to go, but I believe they have updated Eva's, yep, there she be. Yeah, the blood splot in the middle of the forehead, perfect. Found on the bed of a guest room inside the mansion with a weapon resembling an ice pick having been rammed into her forehead. The windows and door to her room, or to the room, were locked from the inside, and even the chain was set. No way could a human have killed her. Yeah, that's definitely making this whole situation a whole lot more interesting. But with this, all 4 siblings have been murdered. They are no longer among the living anymore. Holy shit. Both eyes were wide open, and the image of the person who killed her must have been burned into them, but the only mouth capable of naming that person had been shut for all eternity. Even though her forehead was the last place they wanted to look, they could not tear their eyes from it. Right there, the weapon was stuck into Eva's forehead, standing almost perfectly upright. And on the handle was a complicated design that you would not expect to see on an ordinary weapon. That thing could be summed up with the word occult. It was a vulgar object with a design that might have been of some demon. Oh, he's probably like on the fucking toilet or some shit. Like he was just trying to do his thing and he got fucking murdered. Eva was on top of her bed, but the other bed was empty. Where was Hideyoshi? After taking a backwards glance at Kumasawa, still on her knees and stupefied, he checked the bathroom just in case. At that moment he opened the door, he was greeted by steam and the sound of the shower. The bathroom was of the same familiar style as most hotel bathrooms. When taking a shower, a waterproof curtain was used to keep water from flying out. Oh no, Hideyoshi. Well, I was pretty close as to how he died, but, you know, he was in the shower. He wasn't, you know, trying to do his business on the toilet. But he also got stabbed in a very similar way, right in the middle of the forehead. And, wait, how do I don't know how to remove the... Oh, right here. Yeah. I don't know what you can call that, but that is a very interesting weapon that got shoved right into his head. That waterproof curtain was half open, and lying tumbled down in the bathtub was Hideyoshi, completely naked with both eyes open, and pointing right at Kanon. Just like Eva, a weapon with a demon-like design was stuck into his forehead. Since his head had been under the shower's hot water this whole time, his face wasn't half covered and filthy with blood like Eva's had been. but the sight of him dead while still taking a shower was tragic enough. Alright, let's read his little character profile here. Another one bites the dust, but... ah, fuck. I just read the bottom. I didn't read it, but I looked. Alright, found in the bathroom of the same guest room that Eva was found in, with a weapon resembling an ice pick having been rammed into his forehead just the same as Eva. You can't see either of them by looking through the gap of the door while the chain is set. Can't see and can't reach. Go on. Could a human have killed them then? Oh, no. Okay. I understand now. I was going to bring this up, but all these other characters, that last line, it always seemed like that was somebody else. Like, we had a description of what happened to them, but then that last line, it felt like it was from somebody else, and it still is. This is still fucking Maria. This is still her. This is her perspective. That's her silly, ridiculous-ass laugh. Battler egged on Beatrice, saying that if there were more murders to happen, please do them in such a way that shows that they could not have been committed by another human. There we go. There we have it. Good shit, Battler, you know? I mean, we can't accuse him of, you know, Beatrice going after more people. I think that was definitely on the fucking menu. That was planned to happen. But they happened in such a way that is now showing, yeah, these happened in such a way that could not be done by another person because the chain was still set. Just then, they heard Natsuhi's voice coming from the hall. She was probably coming with Genji. I wouldn't call it graffiti necessarily.
いえ、まだ読んでおりません。うかつに触らん方がいいですが、犯人の指紋が残っとるかもしれん。警察に渡した方がいい。わざわざ手紙を残すくらいです。どうせ指紋など残っていません。
As Natsuhi said that, she picked up the envelope. And before checking its contents, she entered the room herself, where she found Eva dead. This music, by the way, is it's pretty wicked. I will admit that. Yeah, it's pretty fucked up actually. This is pretty graphic. Kanun gripped his handkerchief and twisted the valve, turning off the shower. In the bathtub, a small jar of body soap had fallen with its cap off. It really looked like he had been attacked while taking a shower. There was still a small splash of blood clinging to the white bathtub, and the combination of red and white made a horrible contrast.
わかったね。死斑は出とらんな。死後硬直も始まっとらん。おそらく殺されてから1時間経ったかどうかというところだろう。
God damn, but honestly, what did I say earlier, guys? That was such a fucking red flag.
しかし、このような柄の短い凶器で頭蓋骨は考えられん。
Sorry, I was getting a drink. Nanjo checked their pulse and their pupils, making certain of their deaths once more. As Conan watched this business-like treatment, he thought, couldn't you tell at a glance that they're dead without doing all that? Nanjo thought about removing the weapon, but then decided it would be better to preserve the scene and hand it over to the police, so he left it alone. Yeah, 100%. But a close inspection of the base showed that it didn't have a blade. In fact, it was more conical than blade-shaped. He noticed that, rather than a knife, it was more like a short-handled spear, something with a shape better suited for thrusting than slicing. Rather than a short spear, you might call it a thick ice pick. At any rate, after looking at this scene, no further words were needed to describe what sort of terrible purpose such eerily designed weapons were originally made for, nor was it necessary to explain how they carried out their function. Natsuhi, hoping to escape the repulsive steam filling the bathroom as soon as she could, covered her mouth with a handkerchief and dashed from the room. Just viewing their gruesome bodies for an instant had been enough to burn the image into her eyes. If she looked any longer, that image would surely remain in her vision for all eternity. The rising urge to vomit was exactly the same feeling that she had that morning at the gardening storehouse. For a while, Natsuhi could not help but stand with her back facing the guest room, fighting that sickness in her stomach. Yeah, let's not do that again. Oh, George. George, oh boy.
見せられませんとも。両親のこんなむごい姿をとてもジョージさんには。
But they could tell that those fiercely racing footsteps in the hallway belonged to George. God fucking damn it. Even before he came dashing into the room. George and the other children had been waiting in the parlor. However, when they saw Genji speak to Natsuhi, when they saw her turn pale and fly out of the parlor, they had felt a sense of foreboding. And when they saw a large group of people gathered around the guest room, they were sure of it.
Tosa! Tosa!
Oh, Maria's here this time, I guess. Cool. Kanun didn't have to say anything. George's scream after he ran into the room told them everything they needed to know. How much pain does a man have to go through in one single day? Natsuhi touched George's shoulder with her hand, but he violently shook her off. George fell over beside Eva and buried his face in the bed in front of his mother's face, wailing. Then he pounded on the bed with his fist over and over again. God damn it, man. Not fucking George, dude. This man has been going through so much unnecessary pain all fucking day. Battler had his back against the wall of the hallway and was covering his eyes with his right hand and weeping without restraint. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's pretty fucked up, actually. It is really fucked up. Of course, it's sad whenever anyone dies, no matter who it is. But to Battler, those left alone by the deaths of others were far more worthy of pity. Everyone here now had lost someone close to them. George wasn't the only one to be pitied. However, George's pain was far greater than everyone else's. Yeah, he's lost everybody closest to him here. Next up, it really is just the rest of the family here. Like his cousins and such. Maria tried to comfort Battler in a mechanical-sounding voice. Battler violently wiped his tears. Yeah, somewhat now. Yeah, spin it around, do the gritty.
しょんべんちびりそうになりながら逃げ隠れするのは俺たちじゃねえ。暴いてやるぜ。必ず明日までに。いや、明日なんか待たねえ。今夜中にその胸ぐらを掴み上げてやる。
Yeah, I'll put some money on it. Not much though. That's a bit of a tall order, honestly. Oh man. I don't even know what to say. This is a tough one.
とにかく
Are we in another
この部屋
chapter?
は警察が来るまでこのままにして施錠します。
Oh, holy fuck. We're in chapter 14, boiler room. Cool. All right. Thought we were like on chapter 12 or some shit. Okay. Well, I think we'll call it there. Yeah, red flags be damned, am I right? But I mean, come on, that was like the biggest red flag of them all here. I mean, it was so obvious. You went off on your own. If everybody stayed in the same room, as painful as that would have been the better way of making sure everybody's staying alive, right? I don't know. Fuck. This one's difficult. Even if there is like a witch that's getting away with all these murders, again, if you're trying to do it away from everybody else, such as last night, and now what we have seen this evening, well, if everybody's in the same room, it's not going to be easy pickings. Or at least in my opinion, it wouldn't have been. This is a tough one, honestly. God damn it. Well, at least now we can say for certain, not that I had like the biggest of doubts, but now Eva and Hideyoshi are definitely not behind this. And it definitely is more apparent than ever that none of the family members or servants are also behind this. It does seem to be the work of somebody on the outside, or if we want to continue to use some logic on that the 18th person instead of a 19th person, so somebody here in the family, it's Kinzo that's doing this. But for Kinzo to commit murders on those that works for him, for those that are literally a part of his family, either by blood or through marriage, just holy shit, man. Like, that's crazy. Absolutely nutty. But I think the idea of there being somebody else here, somebody that can do things that we cannot imagine, I think that is something to highly consider. Like, I can't really think of another way of going about this. I guess we'll have to wait for the next one, where Battler will spin the chessboard around a few times, do the Fortnite default dance on it, and see what he can find out. So thank you all for watching this crazy-ass episode. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that fancy jazz, and I will see you all in the next one. Take it easy, and yeah, as you can see by the real-world time here, I'm an hour and a half away from the new year. So happy new year, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy.